In the fog-choked streets of 1895 London, a deadly secret threatens the British Navy. When top-secret submarine plans vanish from Woolwich Arsenal, and a young clerk is found dead on the underground tracks with 7 of the 10 pages, Sherlock Holmes is drawn into a web of treason and murder. With the nation's security at stake, Holmes and Watson unravel a trail of betrayal leading to a cunning German spy, a desperate colonel, and a chilling conspiracy. In just 30 seconds, dive into a thrilling race against time to recover the missing plans before they fall into enemy hands, where every clue could mean salvation or disaster. Chapter 1. A foggy November evening in the waning days of November 1895. A dense fog had settled over London, wrapping the city in a heavy yellow veil that muffled sound and dimmed the gaslights along Baker Street. The air was thick with damp, carrying the faint tang of coal smoke and the distant clatter of hooves on cobblestone. Within the cosy confines of 2-1BI, Dr. John H. Watson sat by a crackling fire, my chair drawn close to the hearth to ward off the chill that seeped through the windows. Across from me, Sherlock Holmes lounged in his armchair, his long, lean frame draped in a dressing gown of deep burgundy, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, and his eyes half closed in that peculiar state of reverie that often preceded either profound insight or prolonged silence. The room was a study in contrasts. The warm glow of the fire cast flickering shadows across the cluttered shelves, where books, chemical apparatus, and the detritus of Holmes's many pursuits jostled for space. A violin rested carelessly against a pile of papers, its bow dangling precariously, while the air held the pungent aroma of Holmes's shag tobacco, curling lazily from the pipe he had set aside. For days, my friend had been uncharacteristically idle, his restless intellect unengaged by any case of note. The absence of a challenge had rendered him listless, his conversation reduced to cryptic remarks or sharp critiques of the morning's newspapers, which lay scattered across the floor. "Watson," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade, "it is a capital mistake to theorize without data. Yet I confess, this fog seems to whisper of secrets, as though the city itself conspires to conceal some great mischief." His grey eyes, sharp and piercing, flicked toward the window, where the fog pressed against the panes like a living thing. I followed his gaze, half expecting to see some spectral figure emerge from the gloom. But there was only the endless swirl of mist. I shifted in my seat, attempting to draw him out. "Surely, Holmes, even London's fog cannot conjure a case worthy of your talents." He gave a faint, mirthless smile. "The fog, Watson, is but a stage. It hides the players, but it cannot silence their footsteps. Mark my words, something stirs beneath this pall." His fingers twitched, as though itching for a problem to unravel, and I sensed the familiar spark of his genius, dormant but ready to ignite. Before I could reply, there came a sharp rap at the door, followed by the creak of the landing as Mrs. Hudson, our indefatigable landlady, ascended with her usual brisk efficiency. "A gentleman to see you, Mr. Holmes," she announced, her tone carrying a hint of unease. "He says it's urgent, and he won't take no for an answer." Holmes's eyes gleamed with sudden interest. "Show him in, Mrs. Hudson," he said, rising from his chair with a fluid grace that belied his earlier languor. "And pray, bring us some tea. I suspect we shall need it." The door opened to admit a tall, gaunt figure, his features pale and drawn beneath the brim of a top hat. His overcoat, damp from the fog, clung to his broad shoulders, and his gloved hands clasped a cane with a grip that betrayed agitation. I recognized him at once as Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock's elder brother, a man whose rare visits to Baker Street were as portentous as a storm on the horizon. Mycroft was no ordinary man. His intellect, if possible, surpassed even Sherlock's, though it was tethered to a sedentary life within the cloistered halls of Whitehall, where he wielded influence as subtle and vast as the fog outside. "Sherlock," Mycroft said without preamble, his voice low and precise. "The Bruce Partington submarine plans have been stolen from Woolwich Arsenal. The matter is of the utmost gravity, and I require your immediate assistance." Holmes's expression sharpened, his lethargy banished as if by a galvanic shock. "The Bruce Partington plans," he repeated, his tone laced with curiosity. "A matter of naval significance, I presume. Pray, sit and tell me all. Omit no detail, however trivial it may seem." Mycroft lowered himself into a chair, his bulk filling the space with an air of authority. I took up my notebook, sensing that this was no ordinary case, and prepared to record the particulars. The firelight played across Mycroft's face, highlighting the deep lines of concern etched there, a rare display of emotion from a man who prided himself on impassivity. "The plans," Mycroft began, "are the blueprints for a submarine of revolutionary design, capable of altering the balance of naval power. They were kept in a locked safe in the office of Sir James Walter, head of the Woolwich Arsenal's technical division. The safe was secured with a unique lock, accessible only to 3 men, Sir James himself, his assistant Sidney Johnson, and a young clerk named Arthur Cadogan West. This morning, the theft was discovered when Sir James opened the safe to review the plans. 10 pages were missing, 7 of which were found later today in a most distressing circumstance." Holmes leaned forward, his eyes alight. "And the circumstance?" Mycroft's lips tightened. "Arthur Cadogan West was found dead on the underground tracks near Aldgate Station shortly before dawn. His skull was fractured, and the 7 pages were stuffed haphazardly into his coat pocket. The remaining 3 pages, which detail the submarine's propulsion system, are still unaccounted for. In the wrong hands, they could compromise the Navy's supremacy for a generation." I felt a chill that had little to do with the fog outside. The death of a man, the theft of state secrets, and the spectre of foreign intrigue. This was a case to stir even Holmes's jaded spirit. He rose, pacing the room with the restless energy of a hound scenting a trail. "The body," he said. "Was it examined? The nature of the injuries?" Dr. Grayson, the police surgeon, conducted a preliminary examination, Mycroft replied. "The fracture suggests a fall from a height, though Aldgate offers no such vantage. The fog was thick, obscuring witnesses, and the tracks showed no signs of a struggle." Holmes paused by the window, his silhouette stark against the yellow haze. "And the safe, forced or unmolested?" "Unmolested," Mycroft said. "The lock was intact, the key still in Sir James's possession. Johnson and West had access to duplicate keys, but both were accounted for." Holmes's fingers drummed against the mantelpiece. A locked safe, an unforced entry, and a dead man with stolen plans. Curious. And the 3 missing pages, why? Not all 10. Why carry 7 to his death? He turned to Mycroft, his gaze piercing. What of West's character? A traitor or a patriot caught in a snare? Mycroft hesitated, a rare sign of uncertainty. West was young, ambitious, and engaged to a Miss Violet Westbury, a respectable woman. His record at the Arsenal was exemplary, though ambition can breed temptation. Sir James vouched for his loyalty, but Sir James himself is now dead by his own hand this morning, overcome by the shame of the breach. I started in my chair. Suicide, the head of the arsenal. Mycroft nodded gravely. He was found in his study, a revolver at his side. The loss of the plans was a blow he could not bear. Holmes's eyes narrowed. To deaths, then, and 3 pages still at large. This is no simple theft, Mycroft. There is a mind at work here, one that weaves a subtle web. He turned to me, his voice brisk. Watson, pack your revolver and a notebook. We shall visit Aldgate and Woolwich without delay. Mycroft, I shall need full access to the arsenal and West's effects. Time is of the essence. Mycroft rose, his expression one of guarded relief. I knew you would not refuse, Sherlock. The nation depends upon it. I shall arrange all necessary permissions. You will report to me directly. As Mycroft departed, his heavy tread fading down the stairs, Holmes turned to me, a glint of excitement in his eyes. Come, Watson, the game is afoot. This fog may hide our quarry, but it shall not hide the truth from us. I hastened to prepare, my heart quickening at the prospect of adventure. The fog outside seemed to thicken, as though conspiring to shield the secrets Holmes was determined to uncover. Yet I had seen my friend pierce greater mysteries than this, and I had no doubt that, come what may, he would unravel the enigma of the Bruce Partington plans. The hours that followed were a blur of activity. Holmes, with his usual disregard for convention, dispatched telegrams to Scotland Yard and arranged for a cab to take us to Aldgate. As we stepped into the street, the fog enveloped us, reducing the world to vague shapes and muffled sounds. The gaslights flickered like distant stars, and the air was heavy with the scent of damp stone and coal dust. Holmes, wrapped in his ulster, strode ahead, his keen eyes scanning the gloom as though it held the answers he sought at Aldgate Station. We were met by Inspector Lestrade, his ferret-like features pinched with cold and irritation. The platform was cordoned off, and the tracks below gleamed faintly in the lamplight. Lestrade led us to the spot where West's body had been found, now marked by a chalk outline. A nasty business, Mr. Holmes, he said, his breath clouding in the chill air. The lad was found just after 4 this morning, his head smashed. In those papers in his pocket, well, it's treason, plain and simple. Holmes crouched beside the tracks, his magnifying glass glinting as he examined the ground. Treason is never plain, Lestrade, he murmured. The injuries described them precisely. Lestrade consulted his notebook. Skull fractured, at the crown, as if struck by a heavy blow or a fall. No other marks, save some bruising on the arms. The papers were crumpled, as though shoved in haste. Holmes rose, his expression thoughtful. A fall, yet no height to fall from. And these papers, why 7, and not all 10? Why carry them at all? He paced the platform, his eyes darting from the tracks to the tunnel beyond. The fog was thick. You say no witnesses? None, Lestrade replied. The fog was like pea soup. The driver of the first train saw nothing until he nearly ran over the body. Holmes nodded, his mind clearly racing. We must see West's effects, and speak with his fiancée, but first to Woolwich. The arsenal holds the key to this puzzle. The journey to Woolwich was a slow one, the fog delaying our cab as it crawled through London's shrouded streets. Holmes sat in silence, his fingers steepled, his thoughts turned inward. I knew better than to interrupt. His mind was a machine, sorting and sifting the fragments of the case. seeking the pattern that would make sense of it all. At the Arsenal, we were received by Sidney Johnson, a wiry, nervous man whose pallor suggested he had not slept. The office where the plans had been kept was a stark, functional space, dominated by a heavy safe in one corner. Holmes examined it with care, noting the intricate lock and the absence of any scratches or marks. A formidable mechanism. He observed, the thief had a key or a skill beyond the common. Johnson, hovering anxiously, confirmed that only he, Sir James, and West had access. The keys were never out of our sight, he insisted. I can't fathom how it was done. Holmes's gaze lingered on the window, its latch secure but its frame old and slightly warped. And West, he said, turning to Johnson, what was his demeanor in recent days? Eager, as always, Johnson replied. He was to be married soon, and he spoke often of his future. A good man, Mr. Holmes, not the sort to betray his country. Holmes nodded, though his expression gave nothing away. We shall see, Mr. Johnson. Truth has a way of hiding in plain sight. As we left the Arsenal, the fog seemed to press closer, its tendrils curling around us like a living thing. Holmes's face was set, his mind already turning to the next step in the chase. Watson, he said, as we climbed into the cab, this is no mere theft. There is a deeper game at play, and I mean to find its master. The cab rattled back toward London, carrying us deeper into the mystery. I glanced at Holmes, his profile sharp against the fogged window, and felt a familiar thrill. Whatever lay ahead, treason, murder, or something yet more sinister, he knew that Sherlock Holmes would face it with the unrelenting clarity of his remarkable mind. The adventure of the Bruce Partington plans had begun, and I, for one, would not miss a moment of it. Chapter 2. The Missing Blueprints. The fog that had cloaked London in its suffocating embrace showed no sign of relenting as our cab rattled away from Baker Street, bound for the heart of Whitehall. Sherlock Holmes sat beside me, his lean frame taut with anticipation, his eyes fixed on some unseen point beyond the mist-shrouded windows. The urgency of Mycroft's summons still hung in the air, and the gravity of the stolen Bruce Partington plans matter of national security lent a weight to our journey that I felt keenly. The clatter of hooves and the distant cries of street vendors were muffled, as though the city itself held its breath, awaiting the unraveling of this perilous mystery. Holmes had been silent since Mycroft's departure, his mind no doubt sifting through the sparse facts we had been given. I ventured to break the quiet. Holmes, this business of the submarine plans, do you think young West was truly a traitor? Or is there more to his death than meets the eye? He turned his sharp gaze upon me, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Watson, you have a commendable instinct for the heart of a matter, but you must learn to distrust first impressions. West's death and the presence of those 7 pages raise more questions than they answer. Why carry only part of the prize? Why meet his end on the underground tracks? No, this is no simple act of treason. There is a design here, and I mean to uncover it. Our cab drew to a halt before a discreet building in Whitehall, its facade unremarkable save for the air of authority that seemed to emanate from its very stones. Mycroft awaited us in a sparsely furnished office, its walls lined with maps and shelves of meticulously ordered files. A single lamp cast a pool of light across his desk, where a series of documents lay spread out, their edges curling slightly in the damp air. Mycroft's expression was as inscrutable as ever, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of impatience as he gestured for us to sit. Sherlock, he began, his voice low and measured, I have secured you full access to the arsenal and to West's personal effects, which are now in the custody of Scotland Yard. But I must impress upon you the delicacy of this matter. The Bruce Partington plans are not merely technical drawings. They represent a leap in naval engineering that could secure Britain's dominance at sea for decades. The 3 missing pages, those detailing the propulsion system, the linchpin. Without them, the submarine is a curiosity. With them, it is a weapon without equal. Holmes leaned forward, his fingers steepled. Let us review the facts. Precisely, Mycroft. The safe, its specifications, its location, and the circumstances of the theft. Leave nothing out. Mycroft nodded, his hands folding over a dossier before him. The safe is a Chubb's pattern, installed 2 years ago in Sir James Walter's private office at Woolwich Arsenal. It is a double-locked mechanism requiring 2 distinct keys, one held by Sir James, the other by his assistant, Sidney Johnson. Arthur Cadogan West, as a senior clerk, had access to a 3rd key, used only under supervision. The office itself is on the 2nd floor, with a single window overlooking a courtyard, secured by a standard latch. On the night of the theft, Sir James locked the safe himself at 6 o'clock, as was his custom. The Arsenal's guards reported no irregularities, and the building was secured by 8. And the discovery of the theft? Holmes pressed. Yesterday morning, at 9, Sir James opened the safe to retrieve the plans for a scheduled review. He found the folder empty. He summoned Johnson, who confirmed that the safe had not been touched since the previous evening. Within hours, the news of West's death reached us, along with the discovery of the 7 pages. Holmes's eyes narrowed. The safe showed no signs of tampering. None, Mycroft replied. The lock was pristine, the keys accounted for. Sir James's key was on his person. Johnson's was in his desk, locked away. West's key was found in his lodgings, untouched. Holmes rose, pacing the room with a restless energy. A locked safe, unforced, and yet the plans are gone. The thief had a key, or a duplicate, or a skill so rare it defies common burglary. And West found dead with 7 of the 10 pages. Why not all? Why carry them to Aldgate, of all places? He paused, his gaze distant. Tell me of West's movements that evening. Mycroft consulted a telegram on his desk. West left the Arsenal at 5, earlier than usual, citing a personal engagement. He was seen dining with his fiancée, Miss Violet Westbury, at a small restaurant in Kennington. At approximately 8, he received a note delivered by a boy, according to the waiter, and left abruptly, telling Miss Westbury he would return shortly. He was not seen alive again until his body was discovered at Aldgate, and Sir James's suicide. I interjected, unable to contain my curiosity. Was it truly shame that drove him to it? Mycroft's expression darkened. Sir James was a man of honour, Watson. The loss of the plans was a personal failure he could not endure. He shot himself in his study at Woolwich, leaving a note, expressing his regret. His brother, Colonel Valentine Walter, discovered the body and informed the authorities. Holmes's head snapped up at the mention of the colonel. Valentine Walter, he murmured. A man of some notoriety, if I recall. Debts, a fondness for the gaming table, and a reputation for indiscretion. Interesting. Mycroft raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, his silence a tacit acknowledgement of Holmes's insight. The immediate concern, he continued, is the recovery of the 3 missing pages. They are the key to the submarine's design, and their absence renders the recovered 7 all but useless. We suspect a foreign power, Germany, perhaps, or France, though we have no evidence as yet. Holmes returned to his chair, his fingers drumming lightly on its arm. The foreign angle is plausible, but premature. The presence of the 7 pages on West suggests either complicity or pursuit. If he was a traitor, why die with only part of the prize? If he was not, why was he killed, and by whom? The answers lie in his final hours and in the mechanism of the theft itself. He turned to me, his voice brisk. Watson, we shall proceed to Scotland Yard to examine West's effects, then to Aldgate to inspect the scene. Mycroft, I shall need a list of all who knew of the plan's existence, officials, clerks, even cleaners. No one is above suspicion. Mycroft nodded, his pen already scratching out a note. You shall have it by evening, but tread carefully, Sherlock. The eyes of the government are upon you, and time is not our ally. We left Whitehall and made our way to Scotland Yard, where Inspector Lestrade awaited us in a cramped office, cluttered with files and the faint smell of ink. West's possessions had been laid out on a table: a worn overcoat, a pocketbook, a silver cigarette case, and the 7 crumpled pages of the Bruce Partington plans, each marked with the arsenal's seal. Holmes examined them with his magnifying glass, noting the creases and faint smudges of dirt. These were handled in haste, he observed. No care was taken to preserve them, as one might expect of a thief intending to sell them. The pocketbook yielded little: a few shillings, a railway ticket, and a photograph of Miss Violet Westbury, her face earnest and delicate. The cigarette case, however, drew Holmes's attention. He opened it, revealing a faint inscription: "To Arthur, with love, V.W., a sentimental touch." He murmured, "But the case is scratched, as though dropped or struck." Curious. Lestrade, hovering nearby, offered his opinion. "Looks to me like West stole the plans, got cold feet, and was done in by his accomplices. Happens all the time with thieves." Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile. "Your theory, Lestrade, is admirably straightforward, but it fails to account for the missing pages and the manner of his death. A man does not fracture his skull by accident on a railway track with no height to fall from." He turned to me. "Watson, make a note of the cigarette case. It may prove significant." From Scotland Yard, we proceeded to Aldgate Station, where the fog still hung heavy, reducing the platform to a blur of shadows and gaslight. The chalk outline of West's body remained, a grim reminder of the tragedy. Holmes knelt beside the tracks, his eyes scanning the gravel and iron with meticulous care. "The body was found here," he said, pointing to a spot near the platform's edge. "No bloodstains beyond the immediate area, and no signs of a struggle. The fracture suggests a fall, yet there is no viaduct, no bridge. How, then, did he come to be here?" Lestrade shrugged. "Could have been pushed from a train, I suppose." Holmes's gaze sharpened. "A train, yes, that is possible. The fog would conceal such a deed, and the early hour ensured few witnesses. But why Aldgate? Why not dispose of the body elsewhere?" He stood, brushing the dust from his knees. "We must trace West's movements after he left the restaurant. The note he received is the key that drew him to his death. As we left the station, the fog seemed to close in, its damp fingers curling around us. Holmes's face was set, his mind a whirl of deductions. "Watson," he said, as we climbed into a cab, "this case is a tapestry of contradictions. A loyal clerk, a stolen key, a dead man on the tracks, and 3 pages that could shift the balance of power. We are on the trail of a cunning mind, and I mean to meet it. The cab rolled into the night, carrying us toward Kennington and Miss Violet Westbury. I glanced at Holmes, his profile a study in concentration, and felt the familiar thrill of the chase. The mystery of the Bruce Partington plans was deepening, and I knew that Sherlock Holmes would stop at nothing to bring its secrets to light. Chapter 3. The scene at Aldgate. The fog that gripped London showed no mercy as we descended from our cab at Aldgate station, its swirling tendrils weaving a shroud that dulled the gaslights and turned passers-by into fleeting phantoms. The air was raw with the chill of late November, and the damp clung to my overcoat as I followed Sherlock Holmes onto the platform where Inspector Lestrade awaited us. The station, though bustling by day, was now a desolate stage, its iron tracks gleaming faintly below and the faint hum of the city subdued by the oppressive mist. The hour was late, yet Holmes's energy was undimmed, his sharp eyes scanning the scene with a predatory intensity that bespoke a mind fully engaged. Lestrade, his thin frame bundled against the cold, greeted us with a nod, his ferret-like features drawn with fatigue. "A grim business, Mr. Holmes," he said, leading us to the edge of the platform where a chalk outline marked the spot where Arthur Cadogan West had met his end. The body was found just here, before dawn, by a sigmoman, head smashed in. 7 of those blessed plans stuffed in his coat. No witnesses, no nothing. Fog was too thick for anyone to see a thing. Holmes knelt beside the chalk outline, his long fingers tracing the air above the tracks, as though conjuring the scene from memory. "Describe the body's position precisely, Lestrade," he said, his voice low but commanding. "Every detail matters." Lestrade consulted his notebook, his breath clouding in the chill air. He was face down, head toward the tunnel, legs sprawled as if he'd fallen. "Skull fractured at the crown. Dr. Grayson says it's consistent with a drop from a height, though there's naught but the platform here. No other injuries, save some bruising on the forearms, like he'd tried to fend something off." The papers were in his inner pocket, crumpled, as if shoved there in a hurry. Holmes's eyes narrowed as he rose, his magnifying glass catching the faint light as he examined the platform's edge. The wood was scuffed, but no distinct marks stood out in the worn surface. He moved to the tracks, descending with a nimble step that belied the danger of the live rails, and inspected the gravel and iron with meticulous care. "No blood beyond the immediate area," he murmured, almost to himself. "No signs of a struggle on the platform. And yet, a fracture from a fall, with no height to fall from." Curious, I ventured a question, my voice low to avoid echoing in the cavernous station. "Could he have been struck elsewhere and brought here, Holmes?" He glanced at me, a flicker of approval in his gaze. "A sound hypothesis, Watson, but it raises further questions. Why Aldgate? Why not a back alley or the Thames? The tracks suggest intent to public discovery, perhaps to send a message or to obscure the true scene of the crime." He turned to Lestrade. "The signalman who found him, what did he report?" Lestrade shrugged, flipping a page in his notebook. "Name's Tompkins. Said he was checking the signals at 4 in the morning when he spotted the body. Thought it was a drunk at first, till he saw the blood. The first train hadn't run yet, so it wasn't hit by a carriage. He raised the alarm and the police were called straight away." Holmes nodded, his gaze drifting to the tunnel's black maw, where the tracks vanished into the fog. "And the train schedules? Any unusual activity that night?" "Nothing out of the ordinary," Lestrade replied. "The last train passed at midnight, and the first was due at 5. The fog slowed things, but the drivers reported no incidents." Holmes paced the platform, his boots clicking softly against the wood. A body on the tracks, a fractured skull, and 7 pages of a stolen plan. The fog is our adversary. Watson, it hides the truth as surely as it hides the stars. He paused, his eyes fixed on a point near the platform's edge, where a faint scratch marred the iron railing. This mark, he said, crouching again, fresh, and made with some force. Not a boot, nor a weapon, perhaps a tool, or a case dropped in haste. I leaned closer, peering at the scratch, which was barely visible in the dim light. West's cigarette case, perhaps. You noted its scratches at Scotland Yard. Precisely, Watson, Holmes said, his voice tinged with satisfaction. The case may have struck this railing as he fell or was placed here. We must confirm its provenance. He stood, brushing the dust from his hands. Lestrade, I shall need to speak with Tompkins, the signalman, and any porters on duty that night. Their observations, however trivial, may hold the key. Lestrade nodded, though his expression suggested skepticism. I'll have them brought to the yard tomorrow. But what's your angle, Holmes? You don't think West was just a thief who got his comeuppance? Holmes's lips curled in a faint, enigmatic smile. Lestrade, you see the surface, but not the depths. West's death is no mere footnote to a theft. It is the heart of the matter. A man does not carry 7 pages of a secret plan to his death, unless driven by purpose, treachery, or something nobler. The missing 3 pages are the prize, and someone killed to protect them. He turned to me. Watson, we shall return to Baker Street to review our findings. Tomorrow we visit Woolwich and Miss Westbury. The threads of this web are beginning to show, but they are tangled yet. As we left the station, the fog seemed to thicken, its cold fingers curling around us like a warning. The platform faded into the gloom, and I felt a shiver that was not entirely due to the chill. Holmes, however, strode forward with purpose, his mind a beacon in the murk. The scene at Aldgate, he said as we climbed into a cab, is a stage set with care. Someone wished West's death to appear an accident, or a betrayal gone wrong. But I see a hand behind it. What's in a hand that plays a dangerous game? The cab rattled through the fog-bound streets, carrying us back to the warmth of Baker Street. I glanced at Holmes, his profile sharp against the dim glow of the cab's lamp, and knew that the mystery of the Bruce Partington plans had taken hold of him. The scene at Aldgate had yielded its first clues, but the greater truth lay hidden, waiting for Sherlock Holmes to drag it into the light. Chapter 4. The Arsenal's secrets. The morning following our visit to Aldgate broke with a sullen persistence of fog, its heavy pall still cloaking London in a shroud of mystery. Sherlock Holmes, however, was undeterred, his mind ablaze with the puzzle of the Bruce Partington plans. As our cab wound its way through the mist toward Woolwich Arsenal, he sat in silence, his sharp features set in concentration, his long fingers tapping an irregular rhythm against the armrest. I knew that look well, a mind sifting through the chaos of facts, seeking the thread that would unravel the whole. Watson, he said at length, breaking the quiet, the Arsenal is the crucible of this affair. A locked safe, unforced, and a dead clerk with 7 of 10 stolen pages suggest an intimacy with the inner workings of that place. We must tread carefully, for the secrets we seek are guarded not only by iron, but by human loyalties and frailties. The Arsenal, when we arrived, loomed through the fog like a fortress, its high walls and iron gates a testament to the gravity of its purpose. We were met at the entrance by Sidney Johnson, Sir James Walter's assistant, a wiry man with a pinched face and nervous eyes that darted about as though expecting ambush. His hands trembled slightly as he led us through the courtyard, past sentries who stood rigid in the damp air, their rifles glinting faintly under the gaslights. "Mr. Holmes," Johnson said, his voice low and strained, "this business has shaken us all. Sir James's death, West's murder, it's unthinkable. The Arsenal has never known such a breach." Holmes's gaze was steady, almost predatory. "Tell me, Mr. Johnson, of the office where the plans were kept. Every detail, if you please." We were led to a second-floor room, its door reinforced with steel and its single window overlooking a barren courtyard. The office was austere, furnished only with a desk, a chair, and the formidable Chubb safe that had housed the Bruce Partington plans. The safe stood in a corner, its black iron surface unmarred by scratches or dents, its lock gleaming with the precision of fine craftsmanship. Holmes approached it with the reverence of an artist before a masterwork, his magnifying glass sweeping over its surface. "No signs of force," he murmured, his fingers tracing the lock's edges. "The key was used, or a duplicate made with extraordinary skill. The mechanism is pristine." He turned to the window, its latch secure but its frame worn, the wood slightly warped from years of damp. He tested the latch, finding it firm, then examined the sill, where a faint smudge of dirt caught his eye. "This window has not been opened recently," he said, "but this marked fresh, and not from the fog. A boot, perhaps, or a tool brushed against it." Johnson, hovering anxiously, shook his head. "The window's always locked, Mr. Holmes. Only Sir James, myself, and West had keys to this room, and we never left it unsecured." Holmes's eyes flicked to the desk, its surface cluttered with papers and a single inkstand. He sifted through the document's routine memoranda, none pertaining to the plans, then paused at a faint scratch on the desk's edge. "This mark," he said, "is recent. Something heavy was dragged across it, perhaps a case or a bag." He turned to Johnson. "What was West's routine here? His duties, his habits?" Johnson hesitated, his fingers twisting together. "Arthur was diligent, sir. He handled the technical drawings, cataloguing and cross-referencing. He was ambitious, always eager to prove himself. Engaged to Miss Violet Westbury, he was talked of her often. A good man, not the sort to betray his country." Holmes's expression remained inscrutable. "And Sir James? His state of mind before his death?" Johnson's face clouded. "He was troubled, sir. The responsibility of the plans weighed on him. He checked the safe daily, sometimes twice. When he found it empty yesterday, he was distraught, blamed himself, though none could have foreseen it. He locked himself in his study after, and, well, you know the rest." Holmes nodded, his gaze returning to the safe. "The keys, Mr. Johnson, where were they kept?" "Sir James carried his on a chain, never out of his sight. Mine's in my desk, locked in a drawer. West's was in his lodgings, or so the police say. I checked the safe myself the night before the theft. Everything was in order." Holmes paced the room, his steps measured, his eyes darting from safe to window to desk. A locked room, a pristine safe, and a thief who left no trace. Yet the plans were taken, and West lies dead with 7 of them. The 3 missing pages are the heart of this riddle. He turned to Johnson, his voice sharp. "Who else knew of the plan's existence?" "Clerks, guards, visitors." Johnson paled. "Only a handful, sir. The project was secret, sir. James, myself, West, and a few senior officials in the Admiralty. Even the guards didn't know what the safe held. Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile. Secrets have a way of slipping through even the tightest nets, Mr. Johnson. We shall need a list of every soul who entered this building in the past month, down to the charwoman. Johnson nodded, his unease palpable. I'll have it prepared, Mr. Holmes. But what do you make of it? Was West the thief, or Holmes held up a hand, cutting him off? I deal in facts, not conjectures. The truth lies in the details, and we have not yet gathered enough. He turned to me. Watson, note the smudge on the sill and the scratch on the desk. They may prove significant. We must now speak with Miss Westbury to trace West's final hours. As we left the office, Johnson lingered, his eyes fixed on the safe as though it held some lingering curse. The arsenal's corridors echoed with our footsteps, the weight of its secrets pressing upon us. Outside, the fog had thickened, reducing the courtyard to a blur of grey shapes. Holmes paused by the gate, his gaze distant. The arsenal guards. Its secrets well, Watson, but not well enough. Someone within these walls knew more than they should, someone who opened the door to treachery. Our cab awaited, and as we climbed aboard, bound for Kennington and Miss Westbury, I felt the stirrings of that familiar excitement. The arsenal had yielded its first clues: a smudge, a scratch, a locked safe unbreached. The mystery of the Bruce Partington plans grew only deeper. Holmes's mind, I knew, was already weaving those fragments into a pattern, and I could only hope to keep pace as he pursued the truth through London's fog-bound labyrinth. Chapter 5. The fiancé's tale, the fog that it held. London, in its relentless grip, seemed to tighten as our cab rattled through the streets toward Kennington, where Miss Violet Westbury, the fiancée of the late Arthur Cadogan West, resided. The journey was slow, the driver navigating with caution through the murky haze that reduced gaslights to mere smudges of light. Sherlock Holmes sat beside me, his lean frame still, his eyes fixed on some unseen horizon, his mind no doubt dissecting the fragments of evidence we had gathered at Aldgate and Woolwich. The weight of the Bruce Partington affair pressed upon us, its implications of treachery and murder lending an urgency to our mission that I felt keenly. Watson, Holmes said at last, his voice cutting through the muffled clatter of the cab. The heart of this case lies not only in locks and tracks, but in the human soul. Miss Westbury may hold the key to West's final hours, and with them, the motive behind his death. We must listen closely, for truth often hides in the cadence of a voice or the falter of a glance. I nodded, my thoughts turning to the young clerk, struck down in his prime with 7 stolen pages in his possession. Was he a traitor, as Lestrade supposed, or a patriot ensnared by a greater plot? The answer, I sensed, lay in the words of the woman who had known him best. We arrived at a modest terraced house in Kennington, its brick facade softened by the fog, but bearing the quiet dignity of a respectable home. A maid ushered us into a small parlour, where Miss Violet Westbury awaited. She was a slight figure, no more than 25, with delicate features and eyes red-rimmed from grief. Her dark dress was simple, yet her bearing spoke of a strength tempered by sorrow. She rose as we entered, her hands clasped tightly before her, and offered a courteous but strained nod. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I was told you might call. I will help however I can, though I cannot fathom why Arthur was taken from me." Holmes took the offered chair, his manner gentle yet incisive, like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. "Miss Westbury," he began, "we are deeply sorry for your loss. Your fiancé's death is entwined with a matter of grave importance, and your account of his final hours may illuminate the path to justice. Pray, tell us everything you recall of the evening before last, omitting no detail, however small." She sat, her hands smoothing her skirt in a nervous gesture. "Arthur was not himself that evening," she said, her eyes fixed on a point beyond us, as though seeing him still. "He came to my home at 6, as we had planned to dine at a restaurant in Kennington and then attend the theatre. He was usually so cheerful, full of plans for our future, but that night he was distracted, almost agitated. He spoke little, and his eyes kept darting to the window, as if expecting someone." Holmes leaned forward, his gaze intent. "Did he mention any cause for his unease? A colleague, a letter, a suspicion?" Miss Westbury hesitated, her fingers twisting a handkerchief. "He said nothing specific, but he mentioned Colonel Valentine Walter, Sir James's brother. Arthur had seen him at the Arsenal more often of late, and he misliked it. He called the Colonel a man of shadows, though he would not explain. Why, I pressed him, but he only said it was work he could not share." I made a note of the name, recalling Holmes's earlier interest in Colonel Walter's dubious reputation. Holmes's expression remained impassive, but his eyes gleamed with the spark of a new lead. "Go on, Miss Westbury," he urged. "What happened next?" "We dined at the Rose and Crown, a quiet place we often visited," she continued. "Arthur was still restless, checking his watch often. At about 8, a boy came to our table with a note. Arthur read it quickly, and his face changed pale, almost frightened. He said he had to leave at once, but promised to return before the theatre. He kissed my hand, told me not to worry, and left. That was the last I saw of him." Her voice broke, and she pressed the handkerchief to Cézanne's lips. Holmes's tone softened, though his questions remained precise. "The note, Miss Westbury, did you see its contents, or the boy who delivered it?" She shook her head. The note was folded, and Arthur tucked it into his pocket. The boy was young, perhaps 12, in a cap and worn jacket. I thought him a messenger from the Arsenal, but he vanished into the crowd outside. I waited at the restaurant until 10, but Arthur never returned. The next I heard, he was gone. Her eyes filled, but she held herself, sono stato io, composed herself, and continued. "I cannot believe he would betray his country, Mr. Holmes. Arthur was loyal, devoted to his work. He spoke of the Bruce Partington plans with pride, not greed." Holmes's eyes narrowed slightly. "He spoke of the plans to you. In what context?" "Only in general terms," she replied. "He said they were vital to the Navy, a project that could secure Britain's future. He was proud to be part of it, though. He never shared details. He was no traitor. I would stake my life on it." Holmes rose, his movements fluid and purposeful. "You have been most helpful, Miss Westbury. Your account gives us much to consider. We shall do all in our power to uncover the truth of this matter." He paused, his gaze softening. "Rest assured, we seek not only the plans, but justice for Arthur." We left the house, stepping back into the fog that seemed to mirror the murkiness of the case. As our cab carried us toward Baker Street, Holmes was silent, his mind no doubt turning over the new pieces of the puzzle. "Colonel Valentine Walter," he said at last, his voice low. "A man of shadows, as West called him. His presence at the Arsenal, West's distrust, and that mysterious note, these are threads we must follow. The fiancé's tale has given us a glimpse of West's heart, Watson, and it was not that of a traitor." But someone wished him to appear so, and that someone is still at large. The cab rolled on, the fog pressing close, and I felt the weight of the mystery deepen. Miss Westbury's words had painted a picture of a man loyal and true, yet caught in a deadly web. As Holmes's mind worked to untangle it, I knew the Arsenal's secrets were but the beginning, and the truth lay hidden in the shadows we had yet to pierce. Chapter 6. A study in motives. The fog that had enshrouded London seemed to seep into the very walls of 2-1B Baker Street as we returned from Kennington. Its damp chill a fitting companion to the dark mystery of the Bruce Partington plans. The fire in our sitting room crackled defiantly, casting flickering shadows across the cluttered shelves and the worn rug where Sherlock Holmes now paced with restless energy. His lean frame moved with the precision of a metronome, his eyes half closed, in that peculiar state of concentration that I had come to recognize as the prelude to revelation. The revelations of Miss Violet Westbury had stirred his mind, and I knew he was weaving the threads of the case into a pattern only he could yet discern. I settled into my armchair, my notebook open, ready to capture the deductions that would inevitably spill forth. Holmes paused by the mantelpiece, his long fingers selecting a pipe from the clutter of tobacco pouches and chemical vials. He lit it with a taper from the fire, the aromatic smoke curling upward as he spoke. "Watson," he began, his voice low and deliberate, "we stand at a crossroads in this affair. The facts, though sparse, are beginning to form a picture, but it is one of contradictions and shadows. Let us review what we know and seek the motives that lie beneath," he resumed, pacing, the pipe clenched between his teeth. "Arthur Cadogan West, a young clerk of ambition and loyalty, is found dead on the underground tracks at Aldgate, his skull fractured, with 7 of the 10 stolen Bruce Partington plans in his possession. The safe at Woolwich Arsenal, unforced, suggests an insider, someone with a key or unparalleled skill. Sir James Walter, head of the Arsenal, takes his own life, overwhelmed by the theft. Colonel Valentine Walter, his brother, emerges as a figure of suspicion, distrusted by West and known for his profligate habits, and 3 pages, the most critical, detailing the submarine's propulsioner, still missing, likely in the hands of a foreign power. These are our pieces, Watson. What do they tell us?" I ventured a response, cautious but eager to contribute. "Wes's death suggests he was either complicit in the theft or pursuing the thief. The 7 pages in his pocket, perhaps he stole them, then regretted it. Or he intercepted the true culprit and paid with his life." Holmes's eyes gleamed with approval, though his tone remained sharp. "A fair hypothesis, Watson, but it falters on the question of motive. If West were a traitor, why carry only 7 pages? A man selling secrets would take all 10 or none to maximize his profit. If he regretted his theft, why not return the plans to the Arsenal or to the police? No, the evidence points to pursuit. West discovered the theft, followed the thief, and was silenced before he could act. His death was no accident. It was murder, staged to look like mischance." He paused, drawing deeply on his pipe. "Consider the scene at Aldgate. A fractured skull, consistent with a fall, yet no height from which to fall. The fog concealed the act, but the tracks were chosen deliberately, public stage, to suggest accident or betrayal. The 7 pages were placed in his pocket, I wager, to cast suspicion on him, to paint him as the traitor. But the 3 missing pages, the heart of the design, were kept back. Why? Because they are the true prize, and the thief, or their master, still holds them." I leaned forward, my mind racing to keep pace. Then the thief is someone within the arsenal, or with access to it. Sidney Johnson, or Colonel Walter, given West's distrust. Holmes's lips curled in a faint smile. Johnson is a possibility, though his nervous demeanor suggests fear rather than guilt. Colonel Walter, however, is a more intriguing figure. A man of debts and questionable associations, frequenting the arsenal where he had no official role. West's suspicion of him, as relayed by Miss Westbury, is a thread we must pull. And then there is the note, the mysterious missive that drew West from the restaurant to his doom. It was no coincidence, Watson. Someone lured him, and that someone knew his habits. He crossed to the window, peering into the fog as though it might yield answers. Motive, Watson, is the key. Treason requires greed, desperation, or ideology. The Bruce Partington plans are a prize for a foreign power, Germany, perhaps with her growing naval ambitions. But the thief needed access, knowledge, and opportunity. Sir James's suicide complicates matters. Was it truly shame, or did he? No more than he could bear. His death removes a witness, and that is no small convenience for our culprit. I made a note, my pen scratching against the paper. The note Miss Westbury mentioned, could it point to Colonel Walter? Possibly, Holmes said, turning back to the room. Or to another, as yet unseen. The boy who delivered it, a street urchin, likely hired for a shilling, may lead us nowhere, but the note's contents are critical. It was urgent enough to pull West from his fiancée's side, specific enough to send him to Aldgate. We must find its source. He set his pipe down, his movements brisk. Tomorrow we shall pursue two paths. First, to Gloucester Road, where West was last seen alive. According to a cabman's report Mycroft forwarded. Second, we must learn more of Colonel Walter's movements. His shadow looms large in this affair. I closed my notebook, the weight of the case settling over me. Holmes, do you believe the 3 pages are already beyond our reach? Sent abroad, perhaps? His eyes darkened, a storm gathering in their depths. Not yet, Watson. The thief, or their agent, may still hold them, awaiting a buyer. The haste of West's murder suggests a plan disrupted, a transaction incomplete. We have time, but it is fleeting. He sank into his armchair, his fingers steepled once more. This is a game of intellect and nerve, played in the fog of London. And the shadows of power, we shall need all our wits to prevail. The fire crackled, its warmth a stark contrast to the chill of the mystery before us. Holmes's words echoed in my mind, each fact a piece in a puzzle that grew ever more intricate. Colonel Walter's name, West's fateful note, the unforced safe, and the missing pages formed a tapestry of motives, each thread leading deeper into the unknown. As I retired to my room, the fog pressed against the windows, a reminder of the obscurity we faced. Yet I had faith in Holmes's relentless mind, and I knew that, come morning, we would plunge once more into the heart of the Bruce Partington affair, seeking the truth that lay hidden in its tangled motives. Chapter 7. The trail to Gloucester Road. The fog that had clung to London like a jealous lover showed faint signs of thinning. As dawn broke on the morning following our return from Kennington, though its ghostly tendrils still wove through the streets, softening the edges of buildings and muffling the clamour of early carts. Within the familiar confines of 2 to 1B Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes was already astir, his lean figure silhouetted against the window as he studied a map of London spread across the table. His pipe, unlit, dangled from his lips, and his eyes burned. with the intensity of a man who sensed the chase drawing near its heart. The revelations of Miss Violet Westbury and the clues from Aldergate and Woolwich had sharpened his focus, and I knew he was poised to follow the trail wherever it led. "Watson," he said without looking up, his voice crisp with purpose, "the note that drew West from his fiancée's side is our Mycroft's report, delivered late last night, places West at Gloucester Road on the evening of his death, seen by a cabman who dropped him near a row of terraced houses. That is our destination today. If West followed the thief there, we may find the stage where this tragedy was set." I joined him at the table, noting the red ink circling Gloucester Road on the map. "Do you suspect a specific house, Holmes, or a person?" His lips twitched in a faint smile. "Patience, Watson. The trail is warm, but not yet clear." West's distrust of Colonel Valentine Walter, coupled with his abrupt departure after receiving that note, suggests he was lured to a place of significance. Gloucester Road is no random choice. It is a quiet district, yet close enough to the underground to facilitate a swift disposal of a body. We shall see what secrets it holds. Breakfast was a hurried affair, Mrs. Hudson's offerings of toast and coffee consumed with scant attention as Holmes outlined our plan. We shall visit Gloucester Road first, to survey the area and question any witnesses. Then we must seek out this cabman, whose testimony may pinpoint West's final steps. Be prepared, Watson, your revolver may be needed, for we tread on dangerous ground. The cab ride to Gloucester Road was a silent one, the fog parting just enough to reveal the outlines of Kensington's orderly streets. The district was respectable, its terraced houses standing in neat rows, their windows shuttered against the damp. Holmes directed the driver to slow as we approached a particular stretch, his eyes scanning the facades with predatory focus. "Here," he said at last, pointing to a house distinguished only by a brass plate bearing the name Hugo Oberstein. "This is the address," Mycroft's cabman noted. Oberstein, a name not unknown to me. A German agent, suspected of trafficking in secrets, though never caught. If West came here, we may have our quarry. We alighted, the cabman instructed to wait, and approached the house. Its exterior was unremarkable, save for a faint air of neglector, shutter slightly askew, a doorstep scuffed with recent marks. Holmes knelt to examine the lock, his magnifying glass glinting in the weak light. "Fresh scratches," he murmured. "Not deep, but recent, as though a key was forced or mishandled. And this scuff made by a boot, heavy and hurried." He straightened, his expression darkening. "Someone entered this house in haste, Watson, and not long ago." I glanced up and down the street, half expecting to see eyes watching from the fog. Could Oberstein be the thief, or an accomplice? Holmes's gaze was fixed on the door. "Oberstein is a broker of secrets, not a common thief. He would not soil his hands with the act itself, but he might orchestrate it. West's presence here suggests he followed someone. Perhaps the thief, perhaps the note's author. We must learn more before we act." He stepped back, noting the window's heavy curtains. "The house is empty now, or so it seems. We shall return tonight, under cover of darkness, to investigate further." Our next stop was a nearby public house, where Mycroft's inquiries had traced the cabman, one Henry Stokes, a grizzled fellow, with a weathered face and a penchant for ale. We found him at a corner table, nursing a pint, his eyes wary as we approached. Holmes, with his usual blend of charm and authority, soon had the man talking. "I remember the fare," Stokes said. wiping foam from his moustache. Young gent, nervous-like, hailed me near Kennington at 8:30. Wanted Gloucester Road, quick as you please. Dropped him outside a house number 13, I think. He paid and hurried off, looking over his shoulder like he expected trouble. Holmes leaned forward, his voice low. Did you see anyone else? A boy, perhaps, or another figure near the house? Stokes scratched his chin. Can't say I did. Fog was thick, and I didn't linger. But the gent seemed in a rush, clutching his coat like he was hiding something. Holmes pressed a coin into the man's hand, his expression thoughtful. You've been most helpful, Stokes. If you recall anything more, send word to 2-1B Baker Street. As we left the public house, the fog seemed to close in once more, its chill seeping into my bones. Holmes was silent, his mind no doubt racing through the implications of Stokes's account. West was lured to Gloucester Road, he said at last, as we climbed back into the cab. The note drew him there, and there he met his fate. Oberstein's house is the pivot of this affair, Watson. If the thief passed through its doors, we shall find traces of their work. Back at Baker Street, Holmes spent the afternoon in a flurry of activity, dispatching telegrams to Mycroft and Scotland Yard, requesting details of Oberstein's known associates and any reports of foreign agents in London. He pored over his files, pulling out a dossier on Oberstein that confirmed his reputation as a shadowy figure in the world of espionage. A dangerous man, Holmes muttered, but cautious. He would not kill West himself, he would use another, someone expendable. As evening fell, we prepared for our return to Gloucester Road. Holmes donned a dark coat and scarf, his eyes alight with the thrill of the hunt. Bring your revolver, Watson, he said, checking his own. Oberstein may be gone, but his lair may yet hold dangers. Under cover of night, the fog lent an eerie stillness to Gloucester Road. We approached Oberstein's house with caution, Holmes's lock-picking tools at the ready. The scratches on the lock yielded to his skill, and we slipped inside, the door creaking softly behind us. The interior was dim, the air heavy with the scent of dust and stale tobacco. Holmes lit a small lantern, its beam revealing a sparsely furnished hall and a staircase leading upward. We moved silently, Holmes's eyes scanning every surface. In the parlor, a desk bore signs of recent using stains, a crumpled sheet of paper with a ciphered script. Holmes pocketed it, his expression grim. Oberstein's work, he whispered. This may lead us to his masters. Upstairs, a bedroom held little of note, but a faint scuff on the floorboard near a wardrobe caught Holmes's eye. He pried it open, revealing a small cache of papers, none of the missing plans, but a list of names, some familiar as minor embassy officials. This is no common theft. Watson, Holmes said, tucking the list into his coat. Oberstein is the spider at the center of a web, and West stumbled into it. We must move swiftly. The 3 pages may still be in London, but not for long. We left the house as we had found it, the fog swallowing our footsteps as we returned to the cab. Holmes's face was set, his mind a whirl of deductions. Gloucester Road has given us a name and a trail, he said as we rattled back to Baker Street. Oberstein is our man, but he is not alone. Tomorrow we pursue Colonel Walter and the ciphered script. The game grows perilous, Watson, but we are closing in. The fog seemed to pulse with secrets as we drove through the night, and I felt the weight of the chase upon me. Holmes's relentless pursuit of the truth was a beacon in the gloom. and I knew that the trail to Gloucester Road had brought us closer to the heart of the Bruce Partington mystery, though the shadows of treachery still loomed large. Chapter 8. The spies' lair. The night was heavy with fog as we returned to Gloucester Road under the cover of darkness, the air thick with the damp chill that seemed to mirror the deepening mystery of the Bruce Partington plans. Sherlock Holmes moved with the silent grace of a panther, his dark coat blending into the shadows as we approached the house of Hugo Oberstein, the German agent whose name had emerged as a pivotal thread in the web of intrigue. The faint glow of a distant gaslight struggled against the mist, casting eerie halos that did little to illuminate the terraced house before us. My hand rested on the revolver in my pocket, its weight a grim reminder of the danger we might face. Within, Holmes paused at the doorstep, his keen eyes scanning the scratches we had noted earlier. "The lock has not been disturbed since our last visit, Watson," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Oberstein is cautious, but he cannot erase all traces of his haste." With a deft movement, he produced his lock-picking tools, and within moments, the door yielded with a soft click. We slipped inside, closing it behind us, and stood in the darkened hall. The air stale with the scent of dust, and something sharper perhaps, the lingering trace of a foreign tobacco. Holmes lit a small lantern, its beam tightly focused to avoid detection from the street. The hall was, as we had left it, sparse and uninviting, with a narrow staircase leading upward and a door to a parlor on our right. "Tread lightly, Watson," he cautioned, moving toward the parlor. "Oberstein is no amateur, and his lair may hold more than papers." The parlor was a study in calculated anonymity, a single desk, a worn armchair, and heavy curtains that blocked all but the faintest sliver of light. Holmes's lanterns swept over the desk, revealing fresh ink stains and a scattering of papers. Most mundane bills, a timetable for the underground, a receipt from a local tobacconist. But one item caught his eye, a small ledger, its pages filled with ciphered script in a precise, angular hand. Holmes's fingers traced the lines, his brow furrowing. "This is no ordinary code, Watson," he said. "It resembles a diplomatic cipher I encountered in the affair of the naval treaty. Oberstein is communicating with someone of significance." He pocketed the ledger, his movements swift but deliberate. "This may name his contacts, or his buyers. I shall decipher it tonight." His gaze shifted to a map of London pinned to the wall, its edges curling from damp. Red ink marked several locations: Geldgate, Charing Cross, and a point near the German embassy. "Oberstein's movements," Holmes murmured. "He planned his routes with care, but West's pursuit disrupted his scheme." A faint creak from above froze us in place. Holmes doused the lantern, plunging us into darkness, and we stood motionless, my heart pounding as I strained to hear. The sound came again, a soft shuffle, as though someone moved cautiously in the attic. Holmes's hand touched my arm, signaling silence, and he led the way to the staircase, his steps soundless on the worn boards. We ascended, my revolver now drawn, the weight of the mystery pressing upon me like the fog outside. At the top of the stairs, a narrow door led to the attic. Holmes tested it, finding it unlocked, and eased it open, revealing a cramped space lit only by a sliver of moonlight through a cracked skylight. The room was empty save for a single chair and a small table, on which lay a single sheet of paper. Technical diagram, unmistakably one of the Bruce Partington plans, its intricate lines detailing the submarine's propulsion system. Holmes's eyes gleamed with triumph. "One of the 3 missing pages," he whispered. "Oberstein held it here, but the others are gonna likely already abroad. I scanned the room, my nerves taut. Was that noise a trap, Holmes? Or is someone still here? He shook his head, his gaze sweeping the shadows. A loose board, perhaps, or a rat. Oberstein is too cunning to linger, but he left this page behind, whether by oversight or design, I cannot yet say. He folded the diagram carefully and tucked it into his coat. This is a prize, Watson, but the game is not won. The other 2 pages are the key, and Oberstein's cipher may lead us to them. We descended, moving with the same stealth that had brought us in. The parlor yielded no further clues, but Holmes paused at the fireplace, noting a faint trace of ash. He sifted through it with a pencil, uncovering a partially burned scrap of paper with a single word: Vienna. A destination, he said, or a code. Oberstein's plans are in motion, and we must move faster. We left the house as silently as we had entered, locking the door behind us to conceal our intrusion. The fog had thickened, swallowing the street in a grey haze, but Holmes's stride was purposeful as we returned to our cab. Oberstein is the linchpin, Watson, he said, as we rattled back toward Baker Street. He orchestrated the theft, but he is not the hand that took the plans. Someone within the arsenal, Colonel Walter, perhaps provided the means, and Wes's pursuit cost him his life. The ciphered ledger and this single page are our weapons now. Back at Baker Street, Holmes set to work at once, spreading the ledger on the table and applying his formidable intellect to its code. His fingers flew across pages of notes, his pipe forgotten as he muttered to himself, testing combinations and substitutions. I watched, marveling at the speed of his mind, until at last he leaned back, a grim smile on his lips. The cipher yields its secrets, Watson. It names a contact at the German embassy, a minor attach, but one with access to diplomatic channels. Oberstein was to meet him at Charing Cross tomorrow night, likely to pass the remaining pages. I felt a surge of excitement. Then we can intercept them. Holmes nodded, though his expression was cautious. We must act with precision. Oberstein is a fox, and he will bolt at the first sign of danger. We shall need Mycroft's authority to secure a warrant and less tradesmen to make the arrest. But first, we must confirm Colonel Walter's role. His shadow grows darker with every step. As the fire burned low, Holmes continued his work, the ledger's secrets unfolding under his relentless scrutiny. The spy's lair had given us a footholder, single page, a ciphered name, a burned scrap pointing to Vienna, but the heart of the Bruce Partington mystery remained elusive. I retired to my room, the fog pressing against the windows, and felt the weight of the chase upon me. Holmes's mind was a beacon in the gloom, and I knew that the trail from Gloucester Road would lead us deeper into the web of treachery, where the truth awaited its moment to be revealed. Chapter 9. The Colonel's shadow, the fog that had plagued London for days, seemed to retreat slightly as morning broke, its heavy veil thinning to reveal the grim outlines of the city's streets, within the familiar clutter of 2-1B Baker Street. Sherlock Holmes sat at his desk, the ciphered ledger from Oberstein's lair spread before him, its secrets now partially unraveled. The single page of the Bruce Partington plans we had recovered lay beside it, a stark reminder of the stakes. In this perilous game, Holmes's eyes, sharp and unyielding, betrayed a mind that had scarcely rested. His pipe cold and forgotten as he pieced together the threads of the case. "Watson," he said, glancing up as I entered, "the net is tightening. Oberstein's cipher points to a rendezvous at Charing Cross tomorrow night, likely to pass the remaining 2 pages. but the shadow of Colonel Valentine Walter looms large. West's distrust, as relayed by Miss Westbury, and the Colonel's frequent presence at the arsenal suggest a role beyond mere coincidence. Today, we confront him. I settled into my chair, my notebook ready. You believe him the thief, then? Or Oberstein's accomplice? Holmes's lips curved in a thin smile. Motive, Watson, is our guide. Colonel Walter is a man of debts, his reputation tarnished by gambling and indiscretions. The Bruce Partington plans are a prize that could erase such burdens, especially in the hands of a foreign buyer. West's suspicion of him, coupled with his access to Sir James, makes him a likely candidate. But we must test his mettle directly. We set out for the Colonel's Club, a discreet establishment in St. James's, its oak-panelled walls and leather armchairs a haven for men of rank and ruin. The fog lingered in the streets, but the gaslights burned brighter now, casting a wan glow over the cobblestones. Colonel Valentine Walter was easily found, lounging in a corner with a glass of brandy, his florid face and heavy-lidded eyes betraying a life of excess. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a military bearing that had softened into self-indulgence. His expression soured as he saw us approach, though he rose with a forced smile. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I presume," he said, his voice smooth but edged with wariness. "And Dr. Watson, to what do I owe this visit?" Holmes wasted no time, his gaze piercing. "Colonel Walter, we are investigating the theft of the Bruce Partington plans and the death of Arthur Cadogan West. Your name has surfaced in connection with both. I suggest you speak plainly, for the matter is of national consequence." The Colonel's face flushed, his hand tightening on his glass. "Preposterous. I am Sir James's brother, a man of honor. What could I possibly know of such things?" Holmes leaned closer, his voice low and relentless. "You were seen frequently at the arsenal, where you had no official role. West distrusted you, calling you a man of shadows. Your debts are well known, Colonel, and the plans are a prize to tempt even the most stalwart. Did you copy the safe's key and sell it to Hugo Oberstein?" The Colonel's bluster faltered, his eyes darting to the side. "This is outrageous. I visited my brother, nothing more. West was a clerk, ambitious and impertinent. His suspicions were baseless." Holmes's smile was cold. "Then explain your presence at Gloucester Road on the night of West's death. A cabman places you near Oberstein's house, not far from where West met his end. You sold the key, Colonel, and West discovered your treachery. He followed you, and your accomplice silenced him." The Colonel's face drained of color, his brandy glass slipping to the table with a clink. He sank into his chair, his hands trembling. I meant no harm," he stammered. "I was desperate debts, you see, ruinous debts." Oberstein approached me months ago, offering a fortune for access to the plans. I copied Sir James's key just once and gave it to him. I never thought it would come to this murder, my brother's death." Holmes's eyes gleamed with triumph, though his tone remained stern. "And West? How did he come to follow you?" The Colonel's voice broke. "He must have overheard me speaking with Oberstein's intermediary at the arsenal. That night, I met Oberstein at Gloucester Road to confirm the deal. West followed, damn him. I didn't know he was there until later. Oberstein's manner brute. I never knew his name dealt with him. They staged it on the tracks to look like an accident." I felt a surge of indignation, my hand itching for my revolver, but Holmes remained calm, his gaze unyielding. "The remaining pages, Colonel, where are they?" Walter shook his head, despair in his eyes. Oberstein has them. He was to meet his buyer at Charing Cross. I know nothing more, I swear it. Holmes rose, his expression one of grim satisfaction. You have betrayed your country and your brother, Colonel. The law will deal with you. Watson, note his confession. We shall need it for Lestrade. He turned to the Colonel. Remain here. Any attempt to flee will only deepen your ruin. We left the club, the fog now a faint haze, as though the truth itself were clearing the air. In the cab, Holmes was silent, his mind already racing toward the next move. Walter's confession confirms Oberstein's role, he said at last. The Colonel was the weak link, his greed the key that unlocked the safe. But Oberstein is the mastermind, and the Charing Cross meeting is our chance to catch him. I nodded, my thoughts on the fallen West. Poor West killed for his loyalty. Holmes's eyes darkened. He was a patriot, Watson, undone by another's treachery. But we shall honor him by recovering the plans and bringing his killers to justice. As we returned to Baker Street, the city seemed to pulse with the urgency of our task. Colonel Walter's shadow had been exposed, his confession a vital piece of the puzzle. Yet the final act awaited at Charing Cross, where Oberstein and the missing pages lay within our grasp. Holmes's relentless pursuit of the truth was a beacon in the fading fog, and I knew the Bruce Partington affair was nearing its climax, with the stakes higher than ever. Chapter 10. The underground riddled. The faint light of a London dawn, struggling through the thinning fog, did little to dispel the chill that lingered in the air as Sherlock Holmes and I set out once more for Aldgate Station. The confession of Colonel Valentine Walter, extracted in the dim confines of his club, had cast a new light on the theft of the Bruce Partington plans, confirming Hugo Oberstein as the mastermind and pointing to a critical rendezvous at Charing Cross. Yet the riddle of Arthur Cadogan West's death on the underground tracks remained unsolved. A knot in the thread of this intricate case that Holmes was determined to untangle. His lean figure, wrapped in a dark ulster, moved with a restless energy, his eyes alight with the fire of the chase. Watson, he said, as our cab rattled through the waking streets, the manner of West's death is no mere detail, it is the fulcrum of this affair. A fractured skull, a body on the tracks, and 7 pages in his possession suggest a murder staged with care. We must understand how he came to be at Aldgate, and why, if we are to close the net around Oberstein and recover the remaining plans. The station, when we arrived, was stirring with the early bustle of porters and commuters, though the platform where West had been found was still cordoned off, a grim reminder of the tragedy. Inspector Lestrade met us there, his thin face etched with fatigue but his manner brisk. "Back again, Mr. Holmes," he said, tipping his hat. "I've got the signalman, Tompkins, waiting, and a driver who worked the line that night. But I'll warn you, they've little to add to what we know." Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile. "The smallest detail, Lestrade, may shift the balance. Let us begin with the scene itself." He descended to the tracks, his magnifying glass glinting as he examined the gravel and iron where West's body had lain. The chalk outline was fading, but Holmes traced its contours with a surgeon's precision, noting the angle of the body and the absence of blood beyond the immediate area. "No signs of a struggle here," he murmured. "The fracture suggests a fall from a height, yet Aldgate offers no such vantage. The body was placed here, Watson, after death." I frowned, peering into the tunnel's dark mouth. "Then he was killed elsewhere and brought to the tracks. But how, with the fog so thick and the station manned. Holmes's eyes gleamed. That, Watson, is the riddle. The underground is a labyrinth of tunnels and sidings, and the fog was a cloak for the murderer. A train is the most likely means of transports, lowered by the fog, perhaps, but capable of carrying a body unseen. He turned to Lestrade. The driver you mentioned, what is his account? Lestrade led us to a small office where a grizzled driver, one William Carter, stood twisting his cap in his hands. His eyes were wary, but he spoke readily under Holmes's steady gaze. I was on the last train through Aldgate, midnight run, he said. Fog was thick as soup, so we crawled along. I felt a jolt near the junction, thought it was a loose rail. Didn't see nothing too dark, and the fog was blinding. Holmes leaned forward, his voice sharp. A jolt, you say? Where, precisely? And what time? Carter scratched his head. Just past the Aldgate junction, maybe 10 minutes to 1. I reported it to the signalman, but we found nothing amiss when we checked later. Holmes's expression was one of quiet triumph. That junction, Watson, is where the tracks curve and slow, a perfect spot to drop a body without detection. The fog ensured no witnesses, and the early hour meant the platform was deserted. He turned to Lestrade. I need access to the train Carter drove, and any sidings near Aldgate where it may have paused. Lestrade nodded, though his skepticism was evident. I'll arrange it, but what's your game, Holmes? You think West was killed on a train? Not on it, Lestrade, but transported by it, Holmes replied. The murderer, likely accomplice, as Colonel Walter confessed, killed West elsewhere, perhaps at Gloucester Road, and used the train to dispose of the body. The 7 pages were placed in his pocket to suggest treachery, diverting suspicion from the true thief. We followed Lestrade to a nearby siding where Carter's train, a grimy locomotive with a string of carriages, stood idle. Holmes clambered aboard, his lantern casting sharp beams across the interior. In the third carriage, he paused, his magnifying glass hovering over a seat near the door. Here, he said, pointing to a faint smear on the wood. Blood, Watson, not yet cleaned. And this, he plucked a single thread, dark and coarse, from the seat's edge. A match for West's overcoat, I'd wager. I felt a thrill of discovery. Then West was carried in this carriage, killed elsewhere, and dropped at the junction. Holmes nodded, his gaze distant. Precisely. The jolt Carter felt was likely the body being pushed from the door as the train slowed. The fog and darkness did the rest. Oberstein's man is no amateur. He chose his moment with care. He turned to Lestrade. Have this carriage impounded and the blood tested. It will confirm West's presence. Lestrade scribbled a note, his expression grudgingly impressed. You're building a case, Holmes, but we've still no sign of those last 2 pages. If Oberstein's got them, they could be halfway to Berlin. By now, Holmes's eyes narrowed. Not yet, Lestrade. The Charing Cross rendezvous is tomorrow night, and Oberstein will not risk moving the pages until he has his buyer. We must be ready to strike. He turned to me, his voice brisk. Watson. We returned to Baker Street to prepare. The underground has given us its secret. The murder was staged, and West was no traitor. Now, we must ensure Oberstein does not slip through our fingers. As we left the siding, the fog seemed to lift further, as though the truth itself were clearing the air. The underground riddle had been solved, revealing a calculated murder disguised as mystery. Yet the greater prize, the missing pages and Oberstein's capture lay ahead. And I knew Holmes's relentless mind would not rest until the Bruce Partington affair was brought to its conclusion. The cab carried us back through London's waking streets, and I felt the pulse of the chase quicken, the shadows of treachery drawing ever closer to the light. Chapter 11. The diplomatic trap. The fog that had gripped London for days had at last begun to dissipate, leaving a crisp clarity to the evening air as Sherlock Holmes and I prepared for the critical encounter at Charing Cross Station. The revelations of the past days, Colonel Valentine Walter's confession, the blood-stained carriage, and the single page recovered from Hugo Oberstein's lair had brought us to the precipice of resolution. Yet the two remaining pages of the Bruce Partington plans, the heart of the submarine's revolutionary design, were still at large, and Holmes's mind was a furnace of focus, burning with the urgency of the chase. In the dim light of 2-1 Baker Street, he sat at his desk, the deciphered ledger before him, his eyes sharp as he outlined our plan. "Watson," he said, his voice low and precise, "tonight we spring the trap. Oberstein's cipher revealed. A rendezvous at Charing Cross, where he intends to pass the final 2 pages to a contact from the German embassy on attach, named Herr von Bork. A minor figure, but well placed for espionage. We must intercept him before the plans leave British soil. Mycroft has secured a warrant, and Lestrade's men will be in position, but subtlety is our weapon. Oberstein is a fox, and von Bork no less cunning." I checked my revolver, its weight a familiar comfort in my pocket. "How do you propose to catch them, Holmes?" "A public station is a risky place for such a transaction." His lips curved in a faint, predatory smile. "Precisely, Watson. The boldness of Charing Cross suggests confidence or desperation. I shall pose as a disaffected clerk, offering the recovered page as bait to draw von Bork out. Lestrade's men will close the net, but we must act with precision. One misstep, and the pages are gone." We set out as dusk fell, the city's gaslights flickering to life against a sky now clear of fog. Charing Cross Station was a hive of activity, its grand arches echoing with the clamour of porters, the hiss of steam and the hurried footsteps of travellers. Holmes, disguised in a drab overcoat and a clerk's stooped posture, carried a folded newspaper, within which lay the single Bruce Partington page we had retrieved. I followed at a distance, my role to watch for Oberstein or any sign of treachery, my heart pounding with the thrill of the impending climax. Holmes took up a position near the ticket office, his demeanour one of nervous agitation, perfectly suited to his assumed role. I stationed myself by a pillar, my eyes scanning the crowd. The station's clock struck 8, and a figure emerged from the throng, a lean man in a tailored coat, his blonde hair and precise movements marking him as Herr von Bork. He approached Holmes, his expression guarded but eager, and I caught the glint of recognition in his eyes as Holmes produced the newspaper, the specifications. "As promised," Holmes said, his voice pitched low, with a hint of a tremor to sell the ruse. "But I must see the payment first." Von Bork's lips twitched, his hands slipping into his coat. "You are bold, Herr Clerk. The papers show me." Holmes unfolded the newspaper, revealing the single page, and von Bork's eyes gleamed. With avarice, he produced a small packet, but as he reached for the page, Holmes's hand clamped on his wrist, and his voice shed its timid mask. "Herr von Bork, you are under arrest for espionage. The plans remain with Britain." Before von Bork could react, Lestrade's men, concealed among the crowd, surged forward, their plainclothes blending with the station's bustle until the moment of action. Von Bork struggled, his face contorting with rage, but the constables were swift, pinning his arms. Holmes, with a deft movement, searched his coat, extracting a sealed envelope. He tore it open, revealing the 2 missing pages of the Bruce Partington plans. Their intricate diagrams unmistakable. "Well done, Lestrade," Holmes said, handing the pages to the inspector. "These must go to Mycroft at once." "But where is Oberstein?" He was to make the exchange. Von Bork, his composure shattered, spat a curse in German. Under Holmes's relentless questioning, he relented, his voice bitter. "Oberstein fled to Brussels yesterday. He suspected a trap after West's death disrupted his plans. The pages were my charge, to be delivered to Berlin." Holmes's eyes darkened, but his tone remained calm. "Then we shall deal with Oberstein in time. For now, the plans are secure." He turned to me, his expression one of quiet triumph. "Watson, the trap has sprung, and the prize is ours. But we must wire Interpol to apprehend Oberstein in Brussels. He will not escape justice." As Lestrade's men led von Bork away, the station's clamour seemed to fade, the weight of the moment settling over us. The recovered pages, now safe in Lestrade's custody, were a victory, but Holmes's gaze was distant, his mind already turning to the fugitive Oberstein. We left Charing Cross, the night air sharp and clear, and returned to Baker Street, where Holmes dispatched a telegram to Interpol with a detailed description of Oberstein and his likely aliases. "Watson," he said as we sat by the fire, "the diplomatic trap has closed one chapter of this affair. The plans are restored, and von Bork will face justice. But Oberstein's flight reminds us that the game of espionage is never truly won. He will surface again, and we must be ready." I nodded, the thrill of the night's success tempered by the shadow of the German agent's escape. The Bruce Partington plans were safe, but the cost West's life. Sir James's despair hung heavy. Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling upward as he stared into the fire, his mind already seeking the next move in this endless game. The diplomatic trap had been a triumph, but the chase was not yet over, and I knew Sherlock Holmes would pursue it to its end. Chapter the 12th. The cost of duty. The fog that had cloaked London for so many days had at last retreated, leaving the city bathed in the pale light of a November afternoon, as Sherlock Holmes and I sat once more in the familiar confines of 2-1B Baker Street. The fire crackled in the grate, casting a warm glow across the cluttered room, where papers, chemical vials, and the ever-present aroma of shag tobacco bore witness to the intensity of our recent endeavours. The Bruce Partington plans, now fully recovered, were safely in the hands of Mycroft Holmes, and the arrest of Herr von Bork at Charing Cross had dealt a decisive blow to the web of espionage that had threatened the nation's security. Yet, as I glanced at Holmes, his lean frame draped in his dressing gown, his eyes fixed on the flickering flames, I sensed a melancholy beneath his triumph, a recognition of the toll exacted by this grim affair. Mycroft arrived promptly at 4, his imposing figure filling the doorway as he entered, his face a mask of guarded relief. He carried a leather portfolio, no doubt containing the restored plans, and his nod to me was curt but not unkind. "Sherlock," he said, settling into a chair, "you have done the nation a great service. The Bruce Partington plans are secure, and the Admiralty is already at work to ensure their implementation. Von Bork is in custody, and Interpol has confirmed Oberstein's arrest in Brussels this morning. Thanks to your timely wire, the matter is closed." Holmes's eyes, sharp and unyielding, met his brother's. "Closed, Mycroft, but not without cost. Arthur Cadogan West lies dead." A loyal man branded a traitor until we proved otherwise. Sir James Walter took his own life, crushed by a shame not wholly his own, and Colonel Valentine Walter, his brother, faces ruin for his treachery. The plans are safe, but the price was heavy. Mycroft's expression softened, a rare crack in his stoic facade. West was a patriot, as you say. His name will be cleared, and his fiancée will know the truth. As for Sir James, his sacrifice was his own, but it underscores the gravity of our work. The Navy owes you a debt, Sherlock, though it will never be publicly acknowledged. Holmes waved a hand, dismissing the sentiment. I seek no laurels. Mycroft, the truth is reward enough, though it is a bitter one in this case. West's pursuit of the thief likely, spurred by that fateful note, cost him his life. And yet it was his courage that led us to Oberstein's lair and the recovery of the plans. He was the spark that lit our path. I leaned forward, my notebook close, my thoughts heavy with the memory of Miss Westbury's grief. Holmes, do you believe Oberstein acted alone, or was there a larger network at play? His gaze returned to the fire, his pipe unlit in his hand. Oberstein was the architect, Watson, but not the sole player. The ciphered ledger revealed connections to minor figures in several embassies, a web of informants and couriers. Von Bork was but one link, and others will rise to take Oberstein's place. The game of espionage is a hydra cut off one head, and another grows. But for now, we have struck a blow, and Britain's secrets are safe. Mycroft rose, his portfolio tucked under his arm. I must return to Whitehall. The Prime Minister will be briefed, though your names will remain, as always, in the shadows. If you need me, Sherlock, you know where to find me. With a nod, he departed, his heavy tread fading down the stairs. Holmes remained silent for a long moment, his fingers steepled, his eyes distant. Watson, he said at last, this case has reminded me of the fragility of duty. West died for it, Sir James broke under it, and Colonel Walter betrayed it for gold. Each man faced the same burden, yet their choices shaped their fates. It is a lesson in the cost of loyalty, and one I shall not soon forget. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. The adventure of the Bruce Partington plans had been a triumph of intellect, a testament to Holmes's relentless pursuit of truth. But it had left scars on Miss Westbury, on the arsenal, on the very fabric of trust. That bound the nation's defenders. I rose, crossing to the window, where the last wisps of fog lingered like ghosts in the street below. And yet, Holmes, I said, turning back to him, your work has preserved that trust. The plans are safe, and West's honor is restored. That is no small thing. His lips curved in a faint, wistful smile. No small thing, perhaps, but the game is never truly over, Watson. There will always be another Oberstein, another shadow to chase. For now, we rest, but the world turns, and its secrets with it. He lit his pipe at last, the smoke curling upward like a veil, and leaned back in his chair, his eyes half closed. In contemplation, as I sat by the fire, the events of the past days played through my mind. The fog-bound tracks at Aldgate, the locked safe at Woolwich, the ciphered ledger in Oberstein's lair, and the trap at Charing Cross. Each step had brought us closer to the truth, yet each had revealed the cost of duty in stark relief. Holmes's genius had prevailed, but the memory of West's sacrifice and Sir James's despair would linger, a reminder of the human toll behind the triumphs. The fire burned low, and as I gazed at my friend, lost in his thoughts, I knew that The adventure of the Bruce Partington plans would remain one of the most poignant in our long partnership. A tale of intellect and loss woven into the fabric of London's eternal fog. The end.